This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Connor Hrabchak with you. We've got a very busy show today. Of course, we're going to be all over the Labor Day Classic. And Tait will join us from Blue Bomber HQ before the Blue and Gold head to Regina for the Labor Day Classic on Sunday afternoon. Scotty Billek as well from the Winnipeg Sun going to pop on, and we'll certainly get to the Labor Day game. And as we are just days away from the kickoff of NFL football, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton is going to jump by. Normally Friday heading into a long weekend, I am completely fired up and ready to crank it out. And I certainly am again today, but it is done, with an incredible amount of sadness and sorrow for the passing of Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. We're going to get to that in just a minute. I do want to welcome everyone into the program. For those of you listening on the podcast, thanks for you to make us a part of your day. And obviously welcome everyone in that's with us live on YouTube today for what would normally be a very, very upbeat and fun show. And we will try to get there. But pretty hard to start off the show without just reflecting on this absolutely tragic news that I guess started to break late last night and unfortunately was confirmed this morning when most of us woke up that Johnny Gaudreau, Calgary Flames legend, now star with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and his brother Matthew were both killed last night by a drunk driver the day before their sister's wedding. I mean, it is just an absolutely unspeakable tragedy. And, we'll talk a little bit more about Johnny, about this right off the top of the program, and then try and move on and get back to what we love to do, and that's having fun talking about sports. But this, needless to say, is certainly not a fun topic to get to at all. Of course, it is Labor Day weekend. The new CFL 110 is up. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Give us a sub as well while you're at it. That is brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg. And we also do want to thank all the sponsors that make our show happen each and every day. Our friends at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Consolidated Supply, and Manitoba Battery, F Apparel, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, Aikens Lake, Assiniboia Downs, The Gold Eyes, Breezy Bend, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, the Royal Sports. By the way, all the new Turf Traditions gear is out just in time for Labor Day weekend if you want to pick up some of that before the big game or if you're heading out to Regina. And, of course, our friends, the Beer Can. And if you are staying in town this weekend, there is a great boxing event for charity Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. at the Beer Can. If you just Google boxing at the Beer Can, it'll take you right to the ticket link. It's all in support of a great charity, helping the homeless in downtown Winnipeg. Pan Am Place would be a great way to kick off your Labor Day Classic Sunday by having a few cold ones down at the Beer Can, and then moving on to wherever you're going to watch the game. It goes without saying, and the timing of this. I mean, there's never a good time for a tragedy like this, but, as everyone goes out and has their fun on Labor Day weekend, and I know we'll be having a lot out in Regina, drinking and driving kills people every single day. And one terrible decision can have an impact on a family, on so many. I mean, and this is the perfect example of it that never goes away. And, certainly, personally, I think everyone, you need to take responsibility for yourself and for others and make those right decisions. But also in an environment like many of you are going to be in this weekend, which is going to be big parties and barbecues and, going out to the bars, take care of yourself, but also keep an eye out for others because, even as a bystander, if you can do something to prevent someone grabbing the keys and getting into a car, you can have an incredible positive impact because when that doesn't happen, we're often faced with stories like we have to talk about today right out of the program. Let's bring in my pal Connor Hrabchak. And Connor, needless to say, this is a horrible way to have to start the program. I don't know about you. I was out at Breezy last night and remembering a great friend of mine and so many in Winnipeg, Randy Shipham, with his Memorial Golf Tournament, helping out MC that event and raising money for the Dream Factory, which was just a wonderful, wonderful day. And it was great to see. I had a lot of friends out there that were playing, that were having a great time all afternoon. I was shocked at how few cars there were in the parking lot because I think a lot of people knew get dropped off and they'll grab an Uber, they'll find another way home. And that's exactly the way you have to do it when you're doing that. But it was a great day. And I got back. I had a later fantasy draft last night. I was going, I don't know, I was on the computer getting ready for the show today. And like just after midnight, I started seeing, a bunch of things about a Johnny Gaudreau rumor. And I'm like, a rumor at this time of night? What is this? What are we talking about here? And, the rumor was the worst. I mean, that he had passed away. And I mean, there had been no confirmations, but there also hadn't been any denials. And it was spreading like wildfire. And I mean, I could only hope that in today's day and age, with the level of irresponsibility, frankly, that we see a lot on social media, that maybe this was just a terrible mistake. Someone getting a bit of bad information and running with it. And like so often, it spread like wildfire. But we weren't really hearing any denials. We weren't hearing any news that would go against that. And then, of course, this morning, you wake up to and turn your phone on, and the worst was realized. Just it's hard to put it into words how tragic this is. And I mean, listen, we as hockey fans, loved watching Johnny and what he did in his time in Calgary, and of course his time in Columbus. He made an impact on so many, and still, and even despite the way he left Calgary, I mean, a very, very popular player. I spent at least 2 hours this morning listening to the tributes on 960 in Calgary, and just how all those people were going through. But man, this is so much more than that. I mean, a mother without her husband, two beautiful young kids without their father. And that's Johnny, and of course his brother. And I mean, for it to happen, their sister was getting married today. I mean, I honestly don't even know where to start to put it into words, and it probably will fail at it. Just talking about the depth of this tragedy, how many people are affected, but no way we could start off the program just getting into firing it up. The bus getting out to Labor Day, because this is a story that far transcends sports and any particular market today.
Yeah, it's an incredibly awful tragedy for so many people involved. And like you said, the more you read about it, the more you read online about how many people that were there for his sister's wedding, how many people this is going to be affecting, his family, his immediate family. And then all the people, you see the videos of people in Columbus and people in Calgary going to the arenas and dropping off flowers, dropping off hockey sticks, autographed jerseys, things of that nature, paying their respects, which is honestly great. And you see the Twitter posts. I saw one from Jay Fresh saying, drop your favorite Johnny Gaudreau memory below. And it's just people just going on and on about all the, not even on ice stuff. Like, we can get into the on ice success, but just the person he was off the ice, and how many people he affected, how beloved he was by the fans, both in Calgary and in Columbus. And I can't imagine what those Columbus fans are going through. This is their second player on the team that has passed away in the last 3 years, which is just unbelievable to even think about. And yeah, last night I saw those rumors start to swirl. Didn't really want to even think about it. So I just went to bed and hoped that when we woke up, it would be a mistake, like you said, but it confirmed the worst. And awful way to kick off the Labor Day weekend. That's for sure. Terrible news with the Gaudreau family.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, we all sometimes need reminders of important things, like not drinking and driving. Unfortunately, the reminders often come in the most tragic way, and that is it. And listen, there were two people in this. I mean, his brother, They had, and anyone that has a brother, I do. I mean, you think about, growing up, how close you are with them, the bond that you have together. The fact that these two were together for such a joyous family event, and losing their lives in this fashion is something that I'm sure the family will never get over. They did have an incredible bond, though. Both really talented young players. Johnny, obviously the phenom. Matthew did end up going on to play, minor league hockey, but I was reading some articles today on, their path growing up. And I mean, Johnny's such a unicorn in a lot of ways. I mean, he is so small. He's a hockey savant is what he is or was, which is just hard to speak of him in the past tense. But, they were growing up in the Philly area in Jersey there, just outside of Philly. And, he was a 4th round pick. He had plenty of offers to play in the NCAA. And he and his brother were going to go somewhere together, almost as a package deal. And Johnny had really deferred to Matthew for like, where do you want to go? And, Matthew then, as often brothers do, thinking about Johnny, sort of selected the place that he believed was best for Johnny and that Johnny wanted to go to the most in BC. And, they went there. He, I believe, was a finalist for the Hobey Baker, early on, and then went to Calgary. And, God knows we've had a lot of conversations about guys that are really talented, and you always heard the thing, oh, well, they're too small. What's going to happen to them when they get to the National Hockey League, playing against men, playing against the biggest? Well, I'll tell you what happened. He turned into one of the most dynamic players we've seen in the game. And a guy that was an immediate fan favorite, but he did that by being such an impact player. I mean, you think about this. He signs a pro deal, scores in his first National Hockey League game, and then as a 21-year-old, a tiny 21-year-old, scores 24 goals, 64 points in his first game, and really started a career that was just under a point a game for his entire 763 games in the National Hockey League. And there's so many moments of brilliance of Johnny. And, I in particular think of, a couple years ago, that line with Matthew Tkachuk, and Elias Lindholm, where I believe they all had 40 goals that season. They were the best line in hockey. He was a plus 64 that season. I'm just pulling up some of these numbers. 115 points. Was right there with the best in the game, at that point in that season, certainly that in. And his career, I think, was just so inspiring for so many. And, I had done, when our station ended and we were starting up Winnipeg Sports Talk, I was working with the guys in Calgary, and Pat Steinberg, a good friend of mine who has been there for, pushing 20 years now, the host of the Flames broadcast, working very well. And, I had that perspective on the Flames, from someone much like I would have on the Winnipeg Jets, that's around the team, that's paying attention to every single thing. And, this was around the time when, it was all about the future of what would happen. And you realize just how much Johnny in particular meant to the fans in Calgary. And I mentioned, I listened to it this morning. There was no talk about, the unfortunate way that he left or the decision that he made or whatever. It was about the memories of the way he brought fans out of the seats. And back to him being just such a unique player. He was inspirational. And I'm not sure there's ever been a player that has connected and resonated with kids so much, because in a lot of ways, he looked like a kid playing amongst these beasts in the National Hockey League. And I mean, nobody could touch him. And I mean, he's in a lot of ways, Dusty tweeted out a picture from that brick tournament of, I don't know how old the kids are, like 10 or something like that. And he's this little guy going through everyone. He had moves and vision at that point that you saw later on in the year, but he was an inspirational player. He was an incredibly productive player. And he was a guy that did things differently than almost anybody else in hockey. And, and again, first and foremost, this is about the families and this is about the personal loss. But I'll tell you what, this is a huge, huge loss for the sport right now, because he was so special and he was so much fun to watch, even if he was playing against your favorite team. And I don't know how the Blue Jackets move forward. I mean, they will have to, but it is. I mean, as I said, there's no words for it, but I mean, this is going to impact so many personally. But for those of us that kind of follow sports, if you can possibly get past the human side of the individual impacts of it, it's an absolute tragedy for the sport and and hockey in general.
Yeah, I just want to second that as someone who, went through the minor hockey stages while Johnny Gaudreau was in the NHL and kind of breaking onto the scene. If you were ever a smaller player, like smaller than the average 13-year-old, and you were going out there and you were the smaller kid, and I often was, that was the player that you were watching. You were watching his highlights. Coaches were pointing to him and saying, look, you don't have to be the tallest player. If you're faster, if you're more agile, if you have better passing, better vision, and you know the game better. So he was an absolute role model. I know for a lot of my teammates growing up playing hockey, and for people now, I mean, we're talking about what an incredible career he had. He was 31 and Columbus has an incredibly young team, right? So he could have had a break. He could have had an incredible year this year. We won't find out. And it's an unbelievable tragedy. And like you said, the way that Columbus moves forward with this, I'm not even sure. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of Sean Monahan too, with the Winnipeg Jets. He goes and signs with the Columbus Blue Jackets in hopes of playing with his best friend for the next 5 years, and then loses him right before the season, which is just unbelievable. There's so many layers to this. And it's a shame both for the sport, like you said, and for people who are maybe smaller, looking for some inspiration. Johnny Gaudreau was always that guy. And obviously for the families involved, it's so sad.
Yeah, you bring up Sean Monahan, and he incredibly was on with Pete Blackburn and the guys on a hockey show, What's Chaos, just 2 days ago. And they were asking him about going to Columbus, and he said, "You know what, Johnny's one of my best friends. I'm so excited to get there and to play with him." And the other side of it, again, this gets back to the just a heartbreaking human side of it, is that he said they both had sons that were just a couple months apart. And as much as he was excited to play with Johnny again, he was also excited to be able to sort of raise their kids together and have them grow up together and probably play hockey together and all that. And I mean, as I said, I mean, I have no idea how, Johnny, his wife and their family move forward from this. I mean, it'll take, many people helping out how they end up, and I'm sure the Monahans will be there. But, Sean is another one of the people that'll be affected, probably forever by this. And again, there'll be another day to talk about the Blue Jackets and, what this means for the team and the organization. Mm-hmm. And I do feel for the people there, though, Blue Jackets fans as well. I mean, this is, you mentioned the incident, a few years ago with the young goalie was it a fireworks accident or something like that? And of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois wears number 80 in a tribute. Listen, this market has had nothing really to cheer for 23 years. It has been ugly on the ice more often than not. They've got a great group of fans that continue to support them. You have this other tragedy. And then for this, I mean, I think about the excitement in and around that hockey market when Johnny Gaudreau, who was one of the top players in the National Hockey League, shocked everyone and decided to go there as a free agent. And hoping that, a player like that choosing Columbus would be able to push them, forward into the right direction. Listen, the last couple of years had not been great. But for them to have dealt with everything loving that team and loving their players the way that they do and fans do in every market, to now once again be going and throwing bouquets at the steps of the Nationwide Arena, remembering a guy that was, such a big part of their squad in the present and for the future, is just really, really tough. And, the one thing I think, I'd like to sort of focus on when we're talking about Johnny is the incredible things that he did, on the ice, but also off the ice. And this was something that really came through today in listening to the coverage out of Calgary, where he spent the majority of his career. I mean, Johnny wasn't a flashy guy off the ice. He certainly was on the ice. He did some things that nobody could do. But, I mentioned just how connected he was with kids. And it was just story after story, both from callers, from Pat and some of the other guys on the air that had just been around the team and watched these interactions. And there was absolutely nobody that had that connection immediately with kids before he even met them. And then the way that he would deal with them, the way he would, make them feel like they were buddies, like just right after talking to them. And you mentioned, as a younger person, playing in minor hockey, when a guy like Johnny was out there, it's hard to overstate, the impact that he had on so many kids playing the game that were probably told that they were too small, or are you sure that this is the game that you want to play? Maybe you should do something else. And they look at someone like that not only made it, but as we just mentioned, was one of the top players in the entire world for an extended stretch. And, I think the legacy of Johnny Gaudreau is going to live forever. I mean, and in many different places. In Calgary, Alberta, it absolutely will. In Columbus, Ohio, it absolutely will. But then you look at the East Coast, and I mean, both in the Boston area, where he played college hockey and was a legendary player, and of course, he's a Philly guy, or from New Jersey, just outside of Philly, which is another area that's got a great rich hockey history. They were so proud of him, and he was very proud of being there. And I think part of the reason why he left Calgary was to sort of get back closer to home as he became a husband and a father, to be able to, be a little bit more accessible for everyone and around him. And obviously that won't be the case, moving forward, because unfortunately he's gone. And, you just can only hope that, their family and his wife in particular has the strength and the support around her, to do everything they can to move on. I mean, you can't move past this. I mean, he's always going to be with them, but taking care of, two young children that are going to grow up without their father. I'm not sure about Matthew's situation, whether he was married or whether he had kids. And then, the thing that it's even more of a gut punch is to think that today was supposed to be one of the greatest days in that entire family's life, their little sister getting married. And instead they're dealing with the loss, and a completely senseless, needless, 100% avoidable. It is tragic because of the effect that it's having on everyone else. But this is one terrible decision by someone to get into a car when they were drunk and decide that they were gonna, this is going too slow, I'm gonna pass someone, and mowing down two completely innocent citizens on bikes. It's this is going to be, it's a heavy time for everybody in hockey and everyone connected, everyone that just even knew of Johnny Gaudreau, and he put a smile on their face playing. And it's not going to be like we're just going to get back to work on Tuesday and this is going to be done. Like, I think a lot of this season, will be dedicated to Johnny and his memory, and back to Columbus. How they move forward as an organization with so much, tragedy and tough times, is going to be really difficult. And I think it's going to really lean on the strength of everybody in that organization to come together right now. And I think the entire hockey world sort of is coming together in mourning and in memory of just such a special special, unique player.
Yeah, and you mentioned the coming together. I saw a lot of people in chat as well. Phyllis, David Asplund, mentioning that they're going to put their sticks out on their front porch, much like when people did that for the Humboldt Broncos when that tragedy happened. But putting hashtag sticks out for Johnny, I saw that going in the chat. So that's one way to come together, show your support. You saw the people at Columbus, at Calgary, at the stadiums putting the flowers there, putting the sticks. Everyone's coming together here and showing their support. And Liz had a great tweet today. Is like the easiest way for us to handle this and kind of grieve through this is to share the positive and the favorite moments we had of Johnny Gaudreau. It's so unbelievably tragic for the family and the kids and all the layers that we've mentioned on the show today. And yeah, like you said, I think this upcoming season there's going to be a lot of Johnny Gaudreau tributes. I wouldn't be shocked to see his number retired in both Columbus and Calgary as a tribute to that as well. And yeah, I'm really interested to see how Columbus and Calgary handles this unbelievable tragedy that just popped up here on this Friday.
Well, and even the league, I mean, like we saw the Winnipeg Jets very early this morning amongst many NHL teams, put out a message and a release of, their sympathies and sorrow, the National Hockey League as well. And again, it's so fresh for everybody, Johnny will be remembered, and he'll be. I don't think there's any doubt that those jerseys will be up in the rafters of both of those buildings. But I just hope that everyone spends a moment to reflect on this, and and if anything, have this be a terrible, terrible way to remind everybody going into this long weekend that, to make wise choices, and, to be a person that can be a positive influence on others as well. Because, even if it's not you driving, if you're getting into a car with someone that's had someone, not only are you putting yourself at risk, but you're not doing what you can to prevent the possibility of a horrible tragedy like this. So, again, it's we will move on and talk about much more upbeat topics, but I mean there really is one story today in the world of sports, frankly, in news if you're a hockey fan, and it is the horrible, tragic passing of the Gaudreau brothers, Johnny and Matthew, yesterday at the hands of a drunk driver. And we will certainly this will not be the last we speak of Johnny and remember him, but we will get ready for and move on to some more positive topics, which include what is going to be a very, very fun trip. And I just will say before we get to this, I mean, obviously we're heading out to Regina tomorrow. I mean, the bus is ready to go. Everyone is all fired up. I mean, Bomber fans are going to have a great time, as will the Rider fans. But this is a long weekend. I mean, every year you look back at the numbers, at the statistics, and unfortunately many people end up being statistics because of terrible decisions. Think twice and do whatever you can to prevent these sorts of things happening. And you'll probably never get a reward. You'll never know what you prevented, but this is the sort of thing that affects people's lives forever, and it is entirely preventable. We are going to talk Bombers and Riders coming up with Eddie Tait right now. Mentioned the CFL 110 is up. Check it out. Maybe get it on the pod for your ride out to Regina if you're heading out there in the car. It is brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg, and Pat and the guys have the push on to get everyone ready for winter. And if you're looking to want to have that clean, organized garage and revolutionize your space, you've still got time to do it before the snow flies. You can give Pat and Garage Living Winnipeg a call at 999-1234. They are gearing up for a busy fall as the push is on to get clients booked, garages designed, and installs complete before winter. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter, organize and beautify your garage with polyaspartic floor coating, made in Canada, premium metal cabinetry, and slat wall storage solutions, not to mention options for lifts, so you can work on that car or work on that sled in the comfort and, most importantly, warmth of your beautiful Garage Living made garage. Check out their website at garageliving.com. All tons of great examples and video of the amazing work that they do are there. And give our friend Pat Kanuga a call. He's loving his move from early morning radio guy to garage designer. And Pat can be reached at 204-999-1234 to book a free in-garage consultation or make an appointment to meet him at their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg, garages made for living. Our friends at Rollies are ready for fall. They've had an unbelievable summer as the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. And if you have a move coming up, take as much of the stress out of moving as possible and get the white glove treatment by Rollies, who have been doing it, as I mentioned, now into their 7th decade. They, as I said, they're all around the province every day, which means flexible routes, flexible timing, and great prices, and even better prices for WSTers. Because if you go to rollies.com, click in the top right corner, the request an estimate feature, and put in the promo code WST, our friends at Rollies have a special discount for WST listeners on both moving services and moving supplies. For your next move, use the most trusted name in moving for over 60 years in Manitoba, Rollies Transfer. Find out more, request a quote today at rollies.com. Our friends at Consolidated Supply, speaking of busy summer, has been great. I was actually out at Breezy yesterday for that Randy Shipham event, and they're doing some irrigation work. And of course, they're utilizing services from Consolidated Supply. And of course, they've got a beautiful new line of golf carts at Breezy, all club car from Consolidated Supply as well. Consolidated Supply, they're the irrigation experts. They've got artificial turf if you're looking for that dream putting green in the backyard. And they're also the leaders in golf carts, both new and used, but also hot tubs, amazing outdoor kitchen options. And they're also the leaders in small engine parts and repair. You got to go and see them to see everything they've got at their beautiful showroom, 1395 Niagara Road East. Pop by and see them. And you can also check out everything they've got going on at Consolidated Supply at cte.ca. And just as we bring in Ed Tait, a big shout out to the gang at Manitoba Battery, your local one-stop shop for all of your battery needs. Whatever you need a battery for. Oh, you're going to the lake this weekend, you need something for the boat. You're going camping, you've got the ATV going on. Everything that you're having fun in the summer, Manitoba Battery powers that. And of course, as we get into fall and dare I say winter, the best prices on car and truck batteries in town. And best part about it, you can pop by and see them at their original location on Logan Avenue or on Dovercourt Drive, their new one in the south side of the city. But they'll also deliver it to you for free. Any purchase over $60 for Manitoba Battery, they'll drop it on your door anywhere inside the perimeter. And of course, they do have the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores. For all your battery needs, pop by and see Manitoba Battery or order online at manitobabattery.com. All right, well, tomorrow morning, bright and early, many Bomber fans are going to be loading up the trucks. In our case, they'll be jumping on the bus and heading out to Regina for another Labor Day Classic. And I cannot remember a situation where these two teams were so close. Oh, and by the way, whoever wins is going to be in first place. Let's get ready for the big weekend and the game on Sunday with our pal Ed Tait from BlueBombers.com. Eddie, thanks so much for doing this. How are you?
Awesome. Fantastic. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Obviously, just shocked about this Johnny Gaudreau news this morning. I mean, absolutely horrible, senseless. And, heading into a weekend like this where there will be a lot of revelry, it is a horrible reminder of making those right decisions when you are out having fun. Obviously, we're going to be on a bus and no one's going to be driving out in Regina this weekend. But, I mean, it is something that I think everyone needs to, take a moment just to think about your own choices and what you can do to prevent this from happening. That being said, the matchup for this game it's so fascinating. And I've used this word preposterous a few times because it was preposterous to think that this could be a battle for first place 3 weeks ago. But the way everything has broken in the CFL Western Division over this past week, despite the horrible 0-4 start, despite 2-6, this team could be in first place coming back from Regina if they can get a win. I mean, I can't remember a scene or a setup for a Labor Day like this in a long time.
No, it's a great setup for this one, isn't it? You're right, Huss. I was just jotting down some notes before I came on with you. Remember before that back-to-back series with BC, everybody was pretty doom and gloom around here and what was ahead for the Bombers. And to think that this could be for first, not just to get back into the playoff discussion in the West, says an awful lot about what's happened, excuse me, not just here in Winnipeg, but around the division in the last few weeks. BC's lost 5 in a row after 5-1 start. Sask 0-4-1 in their last 5. Calgary's lost 2 in a row. Edmonton's lost 1. They're 3-1 in their last 4. But you talk about the defense, the rest of the division, I should say, just kind of stagnating or falling while Winnipeg got its traction again. It's really interesting how the story has changed so quickly, because I think we thought after that BC series that this would be a critical series coming up, the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl, just to get back on the hunt. But here we are talking about possibly first place, and if Winnipeg was to sweep these next 2 games, that'll be another team that they've already won the season series with, including BC and Calgary. So it's nuts, but again, that's part of the beauty of this league, isn't it?
Well, it sure is. And, because of the tie that Saskatchewan has, I'm not sure that the season series will really be impacted. It would take the Bombers having a tie to actually have to go to a tiebreaker. But listen, it's head-to-head. Listen, they have the opportunity to be in first place. They won't need a tiebreaker if they win this football game. Saskatchewan would be 5-6-1. The Bombers would be 6-6. And as you mentioned, they've got it on Calgary. They've got it on BC. And they have yet to play the Edmonton Elks. We almost had a very different conversation around Bomberland this week. Last Friday, this team, especially in the second half, the offense sort of struggled, but then when the chips were down and they had one more opportunity to get it done, Zach Collaros leads the team the length of the field for a late touchdown, and the Bombers grab victory from the jaws of defeat. Listen, this was no Picasso by any stretch of the imagination. However, the clutch nature of the way they won that football game, I think, does bode well for the team moving forward. What are your takeaways from that game, Ed? And maybe from that, how you think that could, affect them in similar situations later on. I certainly think, I'm sure around practice, and Zach's the first one to say, going to need to take care of the football better and have that offense at a better level if they expect to beat a very good Saskatchewan team on the weekend.
Yeah, so first of all, you're right about the narrative changing because of that one drive at the end of the game, because if they had lost to Hamilton, man, it'd be right back to square one in a lot of ways around here, right? That drive was really impressive. I'm not one of those guys that thinks that momentum can carry from one game into the next. The Bombers had so much momentum going into the Hamilton game last week against the worst team on paper in the league and really struggled to get it done. But that last drive was very impressive for all kinds of reasons. This offense has struggled. It's last in the league in a lot of categories, the most important ones in scoring, touchdowns. Red zone productivity has been poor. But when it mattered most, there was Zach throwing it to Dembski, throwing it to or Brady running, Zach running for first downs, and then at the end of the game, finding Kenny Lawler for the touchdown. That was a massive play for all kinds of reasons, but I think it just proves to this offense that they can get it done when it matters. They got to do it a lot more. It's been really a problem area, and if they want to make some noise in the last part of the season here, that offense has really got to get going. But there was so much to take out of that last drive in the play of Zach, most of all. We look at his numbers this year. His passing numbers are poor, but the one-loss record is good, and that's his game right there. And I think if they're going to go anywhere in the second part of the season here, number 8's got to be great, like he was at the end of that game against Hamilton.
You're around the team on a daily basis. I know he was the birthday boy this week, and he was serenaded by his teammates, and they probably had a cupcake waiting for him in the locker room or something afterwards. But how is Zach handling this? Because listen, he has set the bar so high in this city and with this football team. And when you win at the rate that Zach has, expectations are, and listen, he's a very highly paid player, well compensated. It all comes with the territory. it seems like the team has really sort of turned it around. Certainly the offense has been playing better, and we've seen glimpses of it. But tell us about, like, you've been around him. How is Zach handling the fact that his numbers aren't where they've been before and focusing on what they need to do to beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders, which is no easy task, especially on Labor Day?
It's interesting you say that, Huss, because that came up this week, and Drew Wolotarski talked about how Zach has been so level-headed even through the 0-4 start. And here's a little kind of story about Zach being level-headed and kind of putting this all in perspective. So he spoke to the media on Tuesday when it was his birthday, and he talked about how much gratitude he has. His wife and his daughters were at practice. Like Coach O'Shea invites players to bring their families to practice, and they can run on the field to be with their dads after practice. So he spoke about gratitude for that, and then so that was his birthday. Monday and Tuesday at the Niagara Golf and Country Club, they had a golf tournament and then a couple of banquets to raise money for the Bombers amateur football programs. And so Tuesday, it was Zach's birthday, and we had a function that night. I had to do a hot stove with Adam Bighill, Wade Miller, and Zach Collaros, who gave up the rest of his evening on his birthday to be there to kind of rub shoulders with some people that were helping raise money. And I think that says an awful lot about how he's handling it, but just Zach Collaros, the person and the player too. So, look, he's obviously frustrated when he looks at those numbers, and I think he knows that they'll get better. But we also have to look at, again, and I'm not making excuses, but if you don't think that not having Dalton Schoen for most of this season has been a factor, you're kidding yourself. Same with Kenny Lawler being out for a long stretch. And if you look at that last game against Hamilton, Stanley Bryant's out after 4 snaps. They lose Gabe Wallace, who had come in. You had Kendall Randolph moving from guard to tackle. Pat Neufeld's not playing. So that's basically 3 players who would be getting a lot of reps on their O-line out of the game, and they still got it done. So I think the world of the guy. I think he's a tremendous leader. He's still got all kinds of respect in that room. And he's also probably the most competitive guy in that room. So he wants those numbers to get better. Most of all, he wants more wins. So don't think he won't be fired up for Sunday and beyond.
Well, you mentioned the win. Despite all the conversation about where Zach's ranking among CFL quarterbacks, the one number that Zach wants on Sunday is a tick in the win column. Everything else is going to be secondary, and however this team can get a win, I'm sure we'll be fine with Zach, and we'll sure be fine with Mike O'Shea. What do the Bombers need to do to win this football game on Sunday, Ed?
Well, you mentioned Zach. It's an interesting thing. I was just looking at the game notes, Huss. If he wins on Sunday, he'll have his 7th Labor Day Classic win, and that would include his time in Hamilton. That would make him the all-time leader in the CFL history for quarterbacks among wins, more than Bernie Filoni and Danny McManus, Darian Durant. So that's pretty cool company. As to your question about what they need to do, we kind of touched on it already. They've been poor in the red zone, in the score zone. They've got to figure out a way to get more productivity. That sounds so basic, but they've been settling for a lot of Sergio Castillo field goals. In that game against Hamilton, I think there was like a 14-yard field goal. There was an interception in the score zone that Zach threw that I don't know what happened on that play, but it just either was a bad throw or a miscommunication. And I talked to Kenny Lawler about this week, Hassan. They're still making the occasional assignment mistake in the score zone, and those things are critical, right? You can't have one guy running the wrong road and getting 2 guys in the same area, and that leads to an interception or a bad throw or a missed block or whatever it is. They got to clean that stuff up because, I listened to your show with Jeff Hamilton earlier in the week, and you guys were talking with the Bomber defense. It's really come on. I've got a story coming up later today on Jordan Younger, the defensive coordinator, and his first year in that role. You really like what they've done. Their kick cover units have been great. They could use a spark in the return game. Maybe Lucky Whitehead can provide that. But first and foremost for me is this offense has got to get on track, because it's been, at the beginning of the year, you would have said that this unit was going to score 30, 35 points a game because they had that much potential. And as we've seen, it just hasn't been that way so far this year. I still think it can get there, but Sunday would be a good time to start.
Well, and I'll say this for the offense. I mean, even with a decimated offensive line, and we'll get to Stanley Bryant in just a second. I mean, they still have been running the football very well. I mean, Brady Oliveira's at the top of his game. He's the top-ranked running back in the league, and I mean, he's just been eating up opposing defenses, and that I'm sure will be a big part of the Bomber attack on Sunday. I think they'll also look to try to mix in some more explosive plays, but most importantly, not turn the football over. And early on in the year, it was some very uncharacteristic fumbles. I mean, from players like Nick Dembski and Brady Oliveira, that seems to have been cleaned up. Obviously, last week it was some unfortunate picks from Zach Collaros, but ball security, I'm sure Mike O'Shea, not that he needs to, but has been reinforcing that all weekend long. The defense is going to need to step up and play. And then if you can get a little bit more from the offense through the air, I think that's set up to be that well-balanced Bomber team that we've seen for years here in Winnipeg, and has been a real key to why why they have been so successful. A lot of it starts on the offensive line. And last week, at the beginning of the game, was a very, very scary moment, I think, for everybody in Princess Auto Stadium, with Stanley Bryant going down, getting up, and then being down again for one of the longest injury timeouts I can remember. And it seems like what we've heard from Mike O'Shea and the organization, that this was pretty much best case scenario. I know many of us, myself included, were worried that this could be something far more serious. But Mike O'Shea said that he's expecting Stanley Bryant to play. Maybe give us a quick update on what you know about Stanley. And then big picture, just how much of a force he is on that team, and how different things are if 66 isn't out on the line protecting Zach.
Yeah, so it's been a weird week for us being able to get eyeballs on the team. Tuesday they practiced and he wasn't on the field. Wednesday he wasn't on the field. Yesterday was closed, and today they're not practicing. That's the what they do in these longer weeks now between games. So the only update I have for you on Stanley Bryant is that the team is still hopeful he'll play. A guy like Stanley Bryant, he doesn't need to practice. We've heard that before from Coach O'Shea on some of his veteran players. But if anybody does not need to practice and can just put on his helmet on game day, it's Stanley Bryant. I don't think Zach Collaros talked about this week. I don't think enough people understand that Stanley might be the most popular and most respected guy in that locker room. He's got this ability to laugh at himself and not take himself too seriously, even though he's and in this town, it's kind of sacrilege to say sometimes, but he's the greatest lineman in CFL history. And I think Chris Walby might even say that. He's got the hardware to prove it. Chris Walby is from my era too. It's an old school player and dominant. They're not the same in that Chris Walby would just physically maul people, and he could be a good technician. Stanley's just technically so sound and so consistent. So if you take him out of the lineup, we're talking about the greatest left tackle in CFL history. That's massive, and that's massive for Zach Collaros' comfort level too. But I thought Zach reminded a lot of people, including myself, just how respected and loved Stanley is in that room. And so you take him out. I thought Kendall Randolph, given the circumstances, held up in the game over Hamilton, in the win over Hamilton. It's asking a lot for a guy to go from the right side of the O-line at the guard position to the quarterback's blind spot at the tackle position. Now, he's played some tackle. He did play some tackle at Alabama, but that's a big ask in a game. And he had his struggles, and he took a penalty. But, when it mattered most on that drive, he was awesome. So most of this week, Huss, it's been still Kendall Randolph at that left tackle spot because Stanley hasn't been practicing. And then Mika Vanterpool, who's been here since the beginning of training camp. He's a big dude out of Hawaii. They like him, but he's taken most of his work at guard. He's getting a lot of work too this week because Pat Neufeld's still not practicing. So if Stanley can't go on Sunday, obviously that's a major deal, and it'll be good to see have Kendall Randolph get all those reps this week at tackle, but you're talking about the greatest of all time to a guy that's would be making his first start at left tackle in the Labor Day Classic. That's a significant drop off.
Well, I often refer to Stanley as one of the real pillars of this organization. And I've often made, over the years, the argument that the Andrew Harris free agent signing by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers might be the most impactful free agent signing in CFL history. I mean, certainly in Bomber history, with what he did, what he brought, that winning attitude, what he did off the field as well. I mean, there were so many angles to Andrew coming here from BC and what he ended up doing and helping build, which was a championship team and a championship foundation. The one other guy that I would put in that conversation is Stanley Bryant. And, the offensive line does not get the sort of attention in our fantasy football world and showing highlights. I mean, it's the guys getting the touchdowns. It's the big plays. It all starts there. And when you think about it, Ed, I mean, I'm sort of arguing with myself here, but when Kyle Walters took over this football team, there were two things that they needed to do. They needed to improve their Canadian talent, and they needed to find a way to not get their quarterback killed every night. And he went and signed Stanley Bryant, and that was the catalyst to turning that entire group around. And I'm sure if you talk to Mike O'Shea and everyone that knows this game and the insides and outs that's been on the inside, the Bombers winning the line of scrimmage has been the basis of their success for a long time. That is where it all starts. And Stanley Bryant is the guy that really did start it all. And you add in the fact that other than when the team has clinched their bye and just, okay, you guys can have the night off, he's never missed a game in 9 years as well. To me, as much as Andrew Harris did a lot off the field as well and just turning the perception of the team around and giving that attitude, I think Stanley Bryant is right there historically for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And if he's able to, after that scary scene last Friday, get back into the lineup with his teammates, I think it'll be incredibly inspirational for everyone there. And just frankly, this team's a hell of a lot better and a hell of a lot more dangerous when he is out there projecting Zach Collaros and opening up some holes for Brady.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir on Stanley for me, Huss. In this league, people always talk about you got to have a good quarterback and you got to have good Canadians. And so that was a problem before Stanley got here. He'll tell you that his first year with the Bombers, 2015, he wasn't good enough. And so he really concentrated on getting better. And I don't think there's any coincidence that from 2016 on, this team's been a double-digit win seasons and been in the playoffs all the time. Won a couple championships, and it's been the left tackle that's anchored that. If you talk to NFL people or college people, they'll say that you got to be good at quarterback, you got to be good at left tackle, and you got to be good at safety, middle linebacker, and have a shutdown corner. And the Bombers have that. But Stanley has been such a consistent force in this league for so long. People forget too that when he left Calgary, he had been Calgary's top offensive lineman too. So for the fact that they let him go was a strange one. The Stamps don't make many personnel decisions mistakes like that, but they did there, and it's to Winnipeg's benefit. Absolutely a massive free agent signing. You mentioned Andrew Harris. It's right up there with that. There's a lot of other guys in this turnaround that have been part of that too. Justin Medlock, Nick Dembski, all kinds of guys like that came in free agency. But Stanley's, they can start designing his bust for the Hall of Fame already, right? Because he's a slam dunk for going in there. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And so if he's back on Sunday, you're right, Huss, that would be emotionally a huge lift. Let's put it this way. If he's on the plane tomorrow, guys would be jacked up. So it's just you're right. O-linemen don't get a lot of love, but Stanley Bryant deserves a whole ton of that for his career in the CFL.
Well, and listen, speaking of guys being able to play, the team did get some good news. It looks like Drew Wolodarski's back and ready to come off the sixth game, and Adam Bighill as well, full participant in practice, which is great news. I mean, if both of those guys are good to go, and they have Stanley Bryant in, we know Dalton Schoen isn't going to come back. There's still a few other guys, but this will be as healthy as I think the team will pretty much have looked since about week 2.
That's a good point. Big E went down on that win over BC a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it looked like it might be a longer term than it was. So for him to be back is pretty impressive. Drew Wolodarski doesn't get enough credit for some of the dirty work that he does, and it's not just blocking and getting open and converting second downs and stuff like that. He's become a leader in that locker room too, and an important voice there. So I was watching him during the game, the win over Hamilton, and he's on the bench. And, a lot of guys, when they're not dressed, are just kind of watching and being there, and we'll go over and give a guy a pat on the back. He's onto the field like a coach sometimes, celebrating with his teammates or, congratulating them or putting an arm around their shoulder after a bad play. He's an emotional guy too. And they can use a healthy dose of that going into the Labor Day Classic, because it's an emotional game, and you're going to have guys like Pokey Wilson and Josh Johnson and a lot of these new guys that have not played in a game like this before, not the Labor Day Classic before. So it's going to be fun, and getting a guy like that back that can be a calming influence could be really important for the Bombers too.
Well, listen, the stage is set for what is going to be an amazing, amazing evening in Regina on Sunday. Not a ticket to be had, a fully sold out building, much like we saw last week here in Winnipeg, exactly like we'll see next week for the rematch here in Winnipeg for the Banjo Bowl. I know there's a lot of Bomber fans that are making the trip, and Ed, a battle for first place in this game, considering how back and forth it's been in the Labor Day Classic over the last 6-7 years. I don't think we could have a better setup for what should be an amazing, amazing weekend. Hopefully I might cross paths with you in Regina over the next couple of days, my friend. Travel safely out there, and thanks again for your time. Just give a quick nod to what you and the team have coming up at bluebombers.com as we get into the biggest game of the regular season.
Well, Labor Day Classic is different for our content team. We're sending everybody out there. So all our photographers, our video guys are going. Some of them are going by car to document the people stopping in Brandon and the people coming across the border at the Saskatchewan sign. And I've seen that before, where people get out and that's where they have to go to the bathroom on that long drive. Sometimes that's the spot that they pick. So we're going to do it upright with our whole content team out there, and it's going to be fun. So it'll be neat to have some of the guys that don't get to travel a lot alongside with us. And I thought off the top, Huss, that you had a real important message. This will be my 35th Labor Day game, and I'm like a lot of fans. I've had a lot of fun at these things, and but please, 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 they have Uber there. They have cabs in Regina, and it's not a big city. You can walk to and from a lot of places. If you're driving out there, park your car at the hotel and do the rest on foot or through Uber, because that Johnny Gaudreau story is too sad not for us to think about that when we have those kind of decisions to make.
No, amen to that, Ed. This is a weekend about having the biggest party on the prairies. The Manitobans with the Saskatchewan fans, and it is so much fun on the Saturday, having a great time in the park on Sunday, but all of that becomes completely meaningless with a bad decision, and we're spending a lot of time talking about it today. We don't want that to happen in Regina, next week in the Banjo Bowl, or ever. So let's have a hell of a time this weekend in Regina, but let's do it smart. Leave the keys, leave the car at home, and let's support the Uber drivers of Saskatchewan on the weekend, and hopefully come back in first place, talking about Mike O'Shea being able to pass Bud Grant in the Banjo Bowl at home. I can't wait for it, Ed. Have a safe trip out there, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Regina.
Right on. Appreciate you having me on, Huss. Have a good day.
Good stuff. There it is. Always great chat with Ed Tait. Cannot wait for this trip and this game. Of course, 6 p.m. on Sunday is kickoff here in Winnipeg, 5 o'clock in Regina. All of our Bomber reports brought to you by Princess Auto Stadium. Princess Auto Stadium will be empty this weekend, but it is going to be rocking next week for the Banjo Bowl. Not a ticket to be had. If you're lucky enough to have Banjo Bowl tickets, make sure to get out early, 2 hours before kickoff, for the Princess Auto tailgate zone. $5 beers, $3.50 popping hot dogs, inflatables for the kids. it is going to be a zoo before the game. But, max out your game day experience at Princess Auto Stadium by getting out there beforehand. And, of course, Princess Auto, huge sponsors of the Bombers, proud supporters of ours, headquartered, founded right here in Winnipeg with 2 locations to serve you, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. You can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. While we're going to do it responsibly, I know there's going to be some Canadian Club being enjoyed by Bomber and Rider fans this weekend. Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You can get it throughout Princess Auto Stadium and, of course, at your local Manitoba liquor marts. But if you're maybe looking to change it up for your tailgate from the beer you normally drink, check out Canadian Club and Ginger Ale. Pre-mixed cocktail in cans, available at liquor marts with all of your favorite Canadian Club products, and it's also available at your local beer vendor the next time you pop in there as well. If you're looking to change it up a bit this weekend, get the great taste of CC and ginger pre-mixed in cans when you go to your local beer store. One thing I know you don't want to be doing this weekend is spending your time building a fence. If you've got the need to build a fence, let the experts at Wallace & Wallace take care of that. The leaders in fencing and overhead doors since 1946. If you need the security and protection of a new fence, they have vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if you have the need for a new garage door to perfectly match your home, Wallace & Wallace has the biggest and best selection of overhead garage doors in the town. Give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent just off of Kenaston. And hey, there will be no suits packed to Regina this weekend. But when many of us get back to reality come September, and you look into your closet, and if you're realizing you need to up your menswear game heading into the new season, one stop at F Apparel is all you need. Custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and of course, an amazing selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married or in a wedding party any point in the future, make sure to talk to the guys at F about a 15% discount when the gang gets their suits at F Apparel. They're at 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more online or make an appointment to come in for a fitting at F. That's EPH apparel.com. All right. I think we've got Scotty Bllck here ready to go. Let's welcome Scott into the program. Scott, great to have you on the show today, dude. Listen, I mean, we'll get to the Bombers and Riders in a minute. I mean, Connor and I spent the first half hour. Be remiss if just didn't get your thoughts on the absolutely tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau and his brother this morning. It is a story that has rocked the sports world and much more, and is gravitating not even just here in North America, really, but with a guy that was such a special player that made such an impact, lost in such a senseless fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it there. Just absolutely tragic. And I guess I would add 100% preventable, right? I mean, that's the thing that I think saddens people, pisses people off about it. It's like, it's not, like, I don't know. It's really hard to kind of put words to it without, like, really seriously, F drunk drivers, right? Like, I mean, that's just, it's ridiculous. It's like every other drunk driving death out there. They're all 100% preventable. Oftentimes they end in tragedy that doesn't really affect the person that did it. I mean, this is the thing about drunk driving. It's like, I mean, those people are the ones that often survive the accidents, right? I mean, it's just the way that your body is while it's inebriated and all that. And that just, I don't know, man. It's such a sad day for the NHL. Like the hockey world, it's a sad day, right? I remember that the last time that we went through this, I think, was again with Columbus and Kivelnevich, which after the accident with the fireworks a couple of years ago, 3 summers ago, I think, 3 summers ago now. And I don't know, man. Like, I mean, what a talent that we lost in hockey. What a good human. Like, I mean, I don't know Johnny Gaudreau that well. I mean, the only times I've really ever talked to him, when he would come through town, or when I was in other cities where he was, obviously Calgary being the big one. But I mean, he just a pro, right? I mean, I think that's the best way you can say it. I mean, the guy would sit there and stand and talk hockey for however long you wanted to. I mean, he sort of reminded me, if I had anything to say that I knew, he sort of reminded me a little bit of Sid Crosby, who would sit there and chat with you about hockey for long past when, you know, the PR guys would be like, oh, no, you're done or whatever, right? And it's just like, no, like that guy like Johnny would sit there and chat with you about anything. So I think that's I mean, you lose just a tremendous person, and then you lose a great hockey player. And I remember a few seasons ago where he was a part of that really dominant Calgary line. And so, it's it's unbelievably sad and unbelievably aggravating, right? Because it just didn't have to happen, and instead it ruins his family. I mean, it just ruins a lot of people's. You know, his sister was getting married today, right? I don't know if that's still going forward. Who knows, right? Like, what do you do? I mean, what do you do, right? And so, just absolute, like you said, absolute tragedy, and again, 100%, and it always is 100% preventable.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, and again, we've kind of said this a few times. I mean, we spent the entire kind of first half hour of the show kind of kicking this around, myself and Connor, and you know, you get emotional because, as you mentioned, I mean, you get angry. You like knowing that, you know, it's so simple to make a different choice that, you know, that saves lives. I mean, that straight up saves lives. And I don't know how they move on. I mean, you know, we were mentioning, I was watching that Monahan interview with Pete Blackburn yesterday about how excited he was to be playing with Johnny again and raising their kids together. They're just a few months apart, and all of that's broken from it. And you know, just, you know, for a minute on the hockey side of things, I mean, he was named Johnny Hockey. He was just such a unicorn. I mean, there are a few smaller players, but I mean, I referred to him. He was a hockey savant. He thought the game steps ahead of everyone else. I mean, to be able to be the size that he was and succeed at the level that he was, you know, he had to be an incredibly special player, and he did so many amazing things in Calgary. You know, the one goal that stands out for me, I mean, he was a clutch guy too. I mean, that double OT winner in the playoffs against Dallas a few years back with that. I mean, and again, it just speaks to the way that he thought the game. I mean, that wasn't really a place that you would even consider like a high danger scoring chance. It was way to the side, but he understood the way the goaltender was moving. There was going to be a bit of an opening, and in overtime, you shoot the puck, you got it in. And, you know, I mean, the entire city of Calgary is just devastated right now, as you can imagine. And to your point about Columbus, I mean, this franchise, the people there in that area that support it so much. Well, you know what? Honestly, it, you know, I mean, I don't know if people believe in that sort of stuff or not, but I mean, now to lose two players in the offseason in this fashion, combined with their lack of success, it's, I mean, heartbreaking for all those people, but they would trade every win, you know, to have Johnny back. And, you know, just seeing all those wreaths and flowers being placed down at the rinks in Calgary as well, but also at Nationwide Arena, never mind BU and in Philly, in that Jersey area where he grew up. I mean, this is a story that just is impacting so many people, and it all comes back to the fact that it just did not have to happen this way.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Johnny Gaudreau, it's like, he's not, like, I think we would have talked about Johnny Gaudreau after his career ended in his own way, on his own terms. We would have talked about him being sort of like, he's sort of like Martin St. Louis, but without like having to be the physical guy. But you could still be that I think he was like 5'9", right? And that might even have been generous at times. But I mean,
listed
he was 5'9" and like 160 pounds. Yeah, exactly. And then he won the Hobey Baker, which is, I mean, you know, you think of all the guys who've won the Hobey Baker over the years. You know, some of them have gone on to be very, very, very good NHLers, and then get to the NHL and do what he did. Like that, this was sort of his thing. Like he was just very good being a small player. Like he embraced that. He had to, right? I mean, if you wanted to make it good at that size, you sort of have to embrace your size and,
Well, he didn't
learn
just
how to
make it.
work with
He
it.
was a legit star in the National Hockey League.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's like this guy. He again. I think there's gonna be so much said about Johnny Gaudreau now, way too prematurely than it should have been. But I think he's the type of player for small players of this generation to look up to and be like, hey, like I can do it. I can be, whatever it is, 170 pounds soaking wet and 5'9", and have not even just have a career in the NHL, but have an all-star worthy career. To have, I think he had 150 point season 3 years ago.
40 goals, best line in hockey.
And you were saying all this stuff now, and you say it now, and I was like, why wouldn't we saying it before? But it's like I think you wait till the end of the career to like, hey, like this is a guy who really was able to kind of chart a path for a certain type of player. And yeah, I think he's done it. And just like this is a guy who left Calgary, but Calgary, he went to Columbus, right? It wasn't like this guy didn't chase money elsewhere. He didn't chase. He went for family reasons, I believe it was, and really wanted to make the Columbus team better. And then you think, you said it too. You think of Sean Monahan and why he signed in Columbus. Well, one of the reasons why is to reunite with his teammate that he had in Calgary, and who really formed an incredible partnership there during the early seasons of at least of Johnny's career. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, there's nothing that you can say sometimes to try and just keep it sort of family friendly. But and it's just tragic, right? It's one of those days that never should have happened. And the last thing I thought about when I was up at 7 a.m. this morning. That's when you started to see some of the tweets trickle in, because I think this was sort of out there last night. But
well, yeah, like
Twitter
I saw a bunch of things last night.
But
well, and what? I mean, listen, because of the nature of the rumors, we're just praying that this is the worst of social media, that someone has heard something and has got it wrong, and then they've just run with it.
Yeah, I remember thinking back to Kobe about the same thing. You're like, oh, did that? Like, oh, come on, they're just saying that. And
is this like, oh, real? No, this
one of the greatest basketball players ever. Yeah, it's crazy day. Yeah,
no,
I mean, this one I think this one just stings more because of how it happened. I know everything's alleged and all that stuff and whatever, but the way that it is alleged to have happened, that just makes it all the worse, because it's like you said senseless. I say preventable. I mean, all those things, right? All those superlatives of, like that. It's just brutal.
Well, so. And criminal. And
I
have no doubt. I have no doubt that, as much as, this guy's ruined his life too, that has done that.
Sure.
In addition to, I mean, it's never going to be the same. So, you don't like to, you never like to have these conversations and remind people about it. But, if this doesn't resonate with you, I don't know what will. Just, by the way, I mean, I know TMZ, thanks to Joel Kevinson, said that the wedding was canceled. I mean, there's no way I can see
I thought about that this morning. I was having a shower. Like, that was my shower thought today. It was like, what do you do because you've planned this whole thing? And, if you think about it, it's probably like Johnny would probably, and his brother Matthew would probably want you to go forward with, but how do you even get into the right headspace?
Yeah, there'll be another day. Right? There'll be another day for that.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah.
Hey, let's move on, as much as we and everyone has to. But with Johnny and our thoughts, how are you feeling about the Bombers going into Regina on Sunday?
Man, I'll tell you what. I mean, let's if we're going to change the subject here, it's been interesting. I think. So, we talk about Labor Day, and often Labor Day, at least in the past, like they're big games, right? But they're not necessarily standing, altering games or that sort of thing. And I think, whatever. I mean, we were in the locker room 3 days this week, and yesterday especially. And I think there's I would call it a healthy anticipation for this game in that dressing room, because these guys know, and even Mike O'Shea said yesterday, because I asked him, and it's like, you'd hope, or he'd say, like, you'd think a lot of our guys wouldn't be able to, but it is the way it is. This is a first place game. It's a massive game. It would put, if the Bombers can win this game, it sort of puts them in the driver's seat. Well, it does. It puts them in the driver's seat. And then when you're coming back to the Banjo Bowl next week, and you'll have a chance to win, not only, put your 3 points ahead of Saskatchewan, because they have that extra tie point right now, but you would also win the season series with the Riders as well. So yeah, it's I think that the feeling was palpable, I would say, in that dressing room when we were in it yesterday, because I think, and talking as, I talked to Willie Jefferson, Nick Dembski, guys who've played on both sides of this thing. I think they just, this extra sort of, there's that extra carrot, there's that extra sort of motivation to go into Saskatchewan, and a win would mean a lot for the Bombers in terms of their season getting back to 500, but also just, where it puts them, how it sort of solidifies their, incredible sort of, turnaround, let's say in the last month or so. And it comes on, arguably outside of the Grey Cup weekend, the most important, or the most, I don't even got the word right now. It's the biggest weekend in CFL football outside of the Grey Cup weekend. And I hope it's a good game. And I think, given how, I think this team was looking to build off that late drive. I mean, the offense wasn't obviously that good last week, but they got the job done when they needed to. And I think the defense is hungry to get back to more the way they were able to throttle BC instead of, giving up 23 to one of the, to the worst team in the league. But I think a lot of guys know exactly what's up for play this year, and it's more than just, your annual bragging rights and trying to go in there, and that's big enough as it is for a lot of these guys. We've always seen in the past, no matter where these teams are in the standings, like that never really mattered, because these games were so tight and so close. And so, but yeah, I think there's everybody's aware of what's up for stake. It's a 1-0 week, as the Bombers always like to say, but
it's not just
a 1-0 with
week.
an asterisk. Exactly. And you just talk to the players, they just can't sort of hide this one, right? This is one of the ones where, as professional, as cultured this room is and all that, they know that this is a huge week, because it sends a huge message if you can go in there, kind of get back at them for the 19-9 loss earlier this year, in the game which arguably the Bombers should have won. And obviously those bragging rights in Regina are always a big thing.
Do you see, you mentioned the 19-9 game, a total of 28 points. I'm just looking,
Yeah.
the total for this game is 47.5, far lower than the others. I think back to other Labor Day games, and we've had plenty of 22-19s, 2017. Are you expecting, a lower scoring, tight game between these two clubs? That, to me, I think if that is the way that this goes, and I think with both of these defenses playing, I think that's highly likely. To me, I think this game turns on who takes care of the football better. And that hasn't been something the Bombers have been great with earlier in the year. The fumbles have sort of stopped, but of course it was picks last weekend. To me, this I think if you tell me one team wins the turnover differential, I'll tell you that team's winning 95% of the time.
Yeah, and Mike O'Shea made a good point. Well, not a good point, but he readdressed. I don't know. He reiterated the point that the reason why, the sole reason why the last game, the film that they looked at and all that, solely was just on ball security, right? There was just too many fumbles. It wasn't. I think Zach threw one pick in that game. He did. He threw that one pick when they were in the scoring zone. I want to say it was in the second. In the red zone, I think it was the second quarter. But either way,
was a big play.
And that was a big play because, again, and then you have the Dembski fumble, which was probably the most egregious, especially when they could have taken the lead with that one. So this is a team. I don't even think Sergio was that good in that. I think Sergio missed at least one in that game too. So it was an off game for the Bombers on all sides of the ball, really. But we say that was also one of their best defensive games of the year to that point. I think they gave up 1 touchdown in that game. The rest were field goals. And so that was one of the, the defense was starting to figure it out at that point. And now, I mean, where we see the defense now, it's hard to think that this is going to be a high scoring game. Bombers defense, even when in a pretty, not a very good game against Hamilton last week, they still only allowed 23. And they took the ball away. And so you're right. Like, I think this is just the Bombers. If the Bombers are going to get to the next step this year, and I think that one of the biggest things that's held them back, I mean, outside of their offense, but if you even look at a lot of the reason why the offense has been held back at times, it's been interceptions, poorly thrown balls, or fumbles, right? And in key situations, because this is the team. No other team has as few offensive touchdowns. I believe it's 16 this season. Than the Bombers. I mean, if you look at, and you would say, okay, well, this doesn't mean a whole lot because Edmonton's the top team with, I think, 34 offensive touchdowns this year, and they're still in last place in the West. So it's just, but the thing that's holding the back of this team is been all the uncharacteristic turnovers, and this is a team that used to be so good at this, and this year, I mean, a lot of things have changed, and guys have gone out, and they've been really playing shorthanded, especially at receiver. But so it's, with the offense not being as prolific as it has been in the past, these mistakes have really kind of been more magnified because of it. So, yeah, I mean, I think this game is definitely, I would take the under for sure. And I think it's just because both teams have pretty good defense. And, the offenses on both teams just they aren't very good, right? I mean, I think both teams have the possibility of popping off in a game like this, of course. But I mean, I wouldn't be betting my money on it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think both defenses are going to be ready to roll. I think Trevor Harris looked so good against Montreal 2 weeks ago, and that was the game that Brett Lothar just essentially choked for them. And I do think the narrative around the Riders would be a heck of a lot different if he just has an average game. And if he has an average game, they win that comfortably. We wouldn't be talking about a team that hadn't won in a month and a half because they played Montreal really tight in both of their games and ended up on the wrong side of it. But again, I still have a lot of respect for that defense. Milligan's in the mix for the MOP right now, frankly, at this point of the year. But their rush defense is not maybe where their pass defense is. And assuming that Stanley Bryant's going to be in there, which is a big thing. But even when he was out, like, Brady has still been running the football and getting his 7-8 yards a carry. I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Brady. And if they can establish that early on, I really do think that opens things up for Zach. And I do think Zach will be a little bit more comfortable. I mean, listen, he's comfortable in any scenario right now. He's been there before. As Ed mentioned, he could be the winningest Labor Day quarterback ever with a win. But getting Drew Olatarski back, I think, is sort of another thing that he's not a guy that's going to be going 90-yard touchdown passes, but he is sort of a security blanket for Zach, which will help him move the football. And I think that might open things up a little bit more for Kenny Lawler, and certainly for Nick Dembski, who's had a lot more room since 89's been back.
Yeah, I think it can be understated, Huss, like how important it is for this team to get back some of its receivers from sick bay, right? Because the more it's just like nowhere on this team has been affected more by injury than obviously the receiving core. And you just look at Dalton Schoen, who's probably not going to play the rest of the year, and obviously Kenny Lawler, who missed 6 weeks, really 8 weeks, I guess, at the end of it. So yeah, it's having Drew Olatarski back is sort of the same thing that I said the last week. Like having Kenny Lawler back was one of those things where it's a sure hand, right? Now they have that sure hand across the middle and for the shorter gains, and they've been using a lot of Brady, as we've seen, right? Brady's on pace to just absolutely shatter his career catches out of the backfield mark for his career. I think he's pretty close to there already, and we're just over the halfway point of the season. So, but it sort of shows you what this team has had to do to try, and they would like to just keep Brady more in the pass protection. Mike O'Shea raved again about good he is in that this year and in his career, and he's tremendous at that. So yeah, I think having a guy like Wolodarski just gives them another option, right? There's just like, they've had some weapons sort of, obviously Ontario Wilson has continued to be pretty good for this team. But yeah, having Kenny back, and now, we've seen how that helped Nick Dembski in the second BC game, with Nick Dembski with the game-winning touchdown in that game, and the other over-the-shoulder catch on the sidelines. Zach was pretty good in that game too. So I think that, yeah, we're looking at, an offense that is getting some of the pieces back, even though, yeah, I mean, obviously Gabe Wallace goes down, but I think they have the right pieces in the offensive line. And, Randolph won't have to necessarily play at left tackle as long as Stanley's back, so you don't have to really worry about that. And so they should be able to continue to run the ball. So, like, yeah, I think if they can establish the run early, and then they can start, throwing some passes out. And I don't want to say it could be a breakout. I think we've been saying this all year. Like, when is this offense really going to break out? And outside of what was it? It was the Calgary game that they did it earlier this year. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think it's
Now's
a good
the
thing
time
for the offense just to have another. I mean, this is always the time, right? This week. I mean, if you ever want to feel good, it's been interesting talking to these guys this week, Huss, about, like what rivalry, what this game sort of means to guys. And some of them, hadn't really. I remember I talked to Buck Pierce, this is sort of a teaser. Talked to Buck Pierce about it. He was saying when he broke his arm back in 2010, he was out for the season that year. But he said, like, the coolest thing that he thinks back on now, because I mean, at the time it hurts, and you're just like, okay, my season's over, and this is terrible. But he looked back on it now, and he was like, the first thing I can remember now about the whole thing is, like, I got into the ambulance and the paramedics were wearing like Ryder green, and then he got to the hospital, and everybody was in green at the hospital. It's like a holiday out there. And so but it's part of that. It's like, man, if you can, like, if you're a Bomber and you can ruin that sort of like provincial holiday for Saskatchewan, there's something about that I think makes a lot of people, and your fans obviously love that sort of thing too. So yeah, it's just, I was listening to Christian Amell last night on his show, and I was thinking, he was talking about like the biggest rivalries in sports right now, and it's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know if you have a thought on that, but I'm like, man, like, and maybe we're just so close to this one that it's hard, but like, this one brings like two provinces together over 2 weeks every year, in something that, like, everybody wants these honors, right? Everybody wants these bragging rights, and so trying to think of like,
there's nothing like it.
I mean,
there's absolutely nothing like it. I mean,
is there, like, with the traveling?
I'm lucky enough to.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, like, to kind of do both sides of it, and we talk about it all week long in a quote unquote media perspective, and then get on the bus tomorrow with 55 of our closest friends and head on down there and whoop it up on Saturday night with Rider fans.
Yeah.
Everyone's wearing their blue or green. Everyone knows where they stand. Everyone has a great time together. And then pack a stadium and end up having, the biggest party of the entire year in the Canadian Football League. And the way that the rivalry has grown with the addition of the Banjo Bowl, and I mean, I'll Barry Horowitz myself a little bit. I mean, the amount of time I bitched about why we were having the Banjo Bowl game on the first NFL Sunday on not a long weekend. They moved that thing to Saturday. And next thing you know, it was right there with the Labor Day Classic, and that you have Saskatchewan fans coming in on Friday night, having a party, doing the game on Saturday, and then they can actually get home the next day in time to go to work. So, I mean, there's nothing like it. It is the standard for the Canadian Football League for Labor Day and really the entire regular season. And I'll give Bomber fans and Rider fans credit for the way they show out and show up for their teams. There's going to be a lot of envious CFL fans around the league watching. All of us have a blast in Regina this weekend. Scotty, great stuff as always. Have an awesome weekend. Enjoy the game. And I
will do.
Man, it's hard to believe it's September next week. We're just a little bit away from training camp, but we'll have a big rematch to talk about next week. And as I say, I haven't talked about this too much this week, but if the Bombers can win this football game, Then Mike O'Shea has the opportunity to pass Bud Grant as the winningest coach in Blue Bomber history in the Banjo Bowl against the Riders. You could not write
What
a
a
more
story.
perfect script for that.
What a story.
Scott, have a great weekend, pal. Thanks again.
Yep. Yeah, enjoy it out there, Huss. Have a good one, man. Yep.
All right, there's Scotty Bllck. Hacksaw's coming up. I have been informed. I didn't want to touch on this yet, but I do think we're going to be able to give a run for marbles. Our guy Adam behind the scenes has been working on it. And keep your eyes out. In a couple minutes, in just a few minutes, we'll open up registration and see if you can make it happen without the marbles master, Michael Remus, with us for one more Friday. Our friends at Little Brown Jug are ready for the long weekend. Great deal right now down at Little Brown Jug for Labor Day. And it is the 12-12 deal. Comes out a couple times a year. Jump on it till they're out. It is a 12-pack of 1919 tall boys and a 12-pack of generic lager for just $58.56 now until Monday or until they sell out, which they normally do. So if you're heading to Regina and you want some of Winnipeg and Manitoba's favorite local beer for your tailgate or your bus ride or the party out there, definitely get on it. And I saw Pat Rathwell, who's going to be with us as part of the 1930 crew, just saw that the 8-packs of generic are also on sale on LCs right now. So especially if you're going to Regina, you don't want to be forced to drink Pilsner or something like that. Get down a Little Brown Jug on your way out of town or before you hit the lake and take advantage of that great 12-12 deal for 19 and 19, the flagship brands of our friends over at Little Brown Jug. One other thing that's happening this weekend, and if you are staying in the city, our friends at the Beer Can, and we talked about this on Wednesday, are having a boxing event on Sunday afternoon put on by Pan Am Boxing in support of Pan Am Place, an amazing charity that does so much for homeless men in downtown Winnipeg. It's going to be 8 fights. It gets going at 2:00. So imagine this. You get down to the Beer Can. You have a couple generics or whatever your favorite local beers are. You watch some great fights supporting a great cause. And then maybe head on down to Hoagie Boys, grab a couple big ones, and then settle in for the Bombers and Riders in the Labor Day Classic at 6 p.m. I'm going to throw in this link right now, which will take you to the page on the event. And there's a ticket link in there as well. Tickets are $25. Again, it is for a great cause. I would be there if I wasn't in Regina. So if you are there, if you can, support a great cause, an amazing venue for outdoor boxing down at the Beer Can this weekend. Of course, the Beer Can be a great place to go for, and they've got programming all weekend long. I think TJ Honeycutt's going on after the boxing. So it's all there just over the Osborne Bridge, adjacent to the Granite Curling Club. And the Cosmos boys firing up amazing food there at the Beer Can, as well at next door at 116 Sherbrooke, right in the heart of Wolseley. But for the big game, I recommend some big sandwiches. Hoagie Boys on South Osborne open 11:30 to 7 o'clock every single day. I tweeted this out yesterday. If you haven't seen it already, you can go to my Twitter. But the new Turf Traditions CFL gear just got released yesterday, and it is at Royal Sports right now. This is, around Labor Day weekend, they come with the throwback styles, and there is some really, really cool stuff. Check out my Twitter for some pictures of all of it. But if you are heading out to Regina or you just want to get some great gear to wear for the game on Sunday, and then, of course, at the Banjo Bowl, get to Royal Sports while it lasts, 750 Pembina Highway. Of course, Royal Sports, your headquarters for all your merchandise for your local teams. Tons of Bomber gear right now. Of course, always the most Jets gear in town. NFL coming in by the day. And of course, they're the number one hockey superstore in town for over 40 years as you get ready for hockey season. It's all there at Royal Sports, but the new CFL Turf Traditions is on the shelves. Get it while it lasts, 750 Pembina Highway. And of course, online on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. I talked to Greg last night. They will be having their final tent sale of the year, not next weekend, but the following weekend. Do not miss that as well. And hey, if you're not at the game on Sunday, but you're wanting to get together with the gang, the next best place to do it, of course, is your local Boston Pizza. BPs are going to be packed. They'll have the game on all the screens with the sound cranked, ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and all the other great stuff Boston Pizza's serving up. Make it BP if you're not at the game on Sunday. And every day you can get the great taste of Boston Pizza delivered at home by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, as I said, we're going to give a crack at marbles without Remus, so pay attention. In about 5 minutes or so, we will open up registration for that. But right now, as we count down to next Thursday at NFL kickoff, we bring in our good friend Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. And Saw, it's great to have you on. Listen, there's a lot of excitement about this big weekend of the Canadian Football League and NFL season coming up. But, I mean, we spent about the first half hour talking about this tragedy today. Just a quick thought on the absolutely horrible passing of Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew yesterday, the day before their sister was set to be married.
Yeah, heavy heart. I mean, it took my heart away. That was coming back from therapy and rehab at the hospital, and early this morning it popped up on my cell phone. I couldn't believe the story. And, you know, the further you delve into it, you just see what a horrible tragedy it was. And I just sent you the New York newspaper article about it. Johnny Hockey. I listened to the NHL channel throughout the course of the morning on Sirius XM, and just the outpouring of love and respect was just absolutely amazing, Hustler, and just taken from us way too early. And can't imagine the grief in Calgary, where Johnny Hockey was so popular. And obviously, Don Waddell, the general manager in Columbus, is a friend of mine, and I can't imagine the grief there, because that's a loss of a really popular player and person. And I think it's a terrible setback for the Blue Jackets, because, of course, they had already gotten rid of Patrick Laine, who went to Montreal. So, boy, they're going to have to scramble to find goal scorings, but just a terrible loss of life. And, you know, just how it happened and who was involved in it and what they caused to happen. Just tragic beyond belief for that family. And hockey family is feeling it terrible, too.
Yeah, I spent a couple hours listening to my friends over on 960 in Calgary. And obviously there was no regular programming. It was essentially a full morning tribute to Johnny Hockey, who made such an incredible impact there in the Calgary community. And, you know, there's no words. I mean, it is senseless. It is tragic, obviously, for the individual that caused this. It is criminal. But, I mean, you know, it'll take a long time to pick up the pieces for the Gaudreau family, you know, and certainly for the Blue Jackets family, who, you know, this is the second time in a few years they've lost a player in the offseason. And, you know, you just feel for everyone. But the impact of Johnny will live forever, really. I mean, the way he inspired, especially kids, connected with kids, younger players, smaller players, to show what is possible, is never going to be forgotten. And it's just, you know, gone way too soon, with way too much of not just a career left, but an entire life with his young family. And, you know, of course, former Winnipeg Jet Sean Monahan just signed with Columbus to reunite with Johnny. Was on an interview 2 days ago talking about how excited he was both to play with him, but now at the new stage in their lives, they had two sons that were within a couple months of each other. The thought of raising them together and getting them on the ice, it's just, it really is unspeakable. And, you know, that is kind of dwarfing everything else. But, I mean, there are other things that we do want to get to, Lee. And, you know, as we get into the NFL notebook, since we last spoke, you sort of knew we were now to a pressure point where some of these things were going to get figured out. But CeeDee Lamb gets his big deal. Brandon Ayuk just signed a deal that apparently was on his desk for the last 3 weeks. What do you make of the way that these receiver deals have been done, and the fact that Jamar Chase is showing up 15 minutes late to practice in street clothes saying, wait a second, time for me to get mine?
Well, it's what the NFL has become. It's what sports has become. Everybody's got to get the next contract, which has got to be $1 more than the last contract. In terms of Dallas, so they've got half the package done. They still have to deal with Dak Prescott's demand for $60 million per season a year from now. I do find it hard to believe that Prescott is willing to actually go into the start of the NFL season next weekend in Dallas with only 1 year left on his contract. If something were to happen to him from an injury standpoint, he would lose all of his negotiating power and his leverage. But it's just what the National Football League has become because the money is out there and the collective bargaining agreement guarantees the top stars are going to get pay bumps every time their contracts come up. CeeDee Lamb's coming off a phenomenal season, 135 catches. He gets a phenomenal contract at $34 million per year. Ayuk, I was fearful, was just becoming a big distraction in San Francisco, and I don't think Kyle Shanahan has any patience for distractions, but he's there now. But I do think somewhere during the course of the season, somebody's going to have to leave San Francisco because they still have to deal with Brock Purdy's big contract extension coming up next season. So, there still may be a deal for Deebo Samuel or somebody else is probably going to exit. Cincinnati's thing's complicated just because ownership is so bloody cheap. Historically, they've always been cheap. It's owned by Mike Brown, whose father was Paul Brown, and they were historically cheap. They'll take care of Jamar Chase, but obviously it's going to probably cost him T. Higgins, who I think is going to leave at the end of this coming season because he's on the final year of his deal. So you got those contract things solved. One contract thing that's not solved is with the New York Jets, and this is kind of nasty. Hassan Reddick, and now he's at odds with the general manager. And Joe Douglas is a no BS general manager. And Joe Douglas called out Hassan Reddick. They traded for Reddick from Philadelphia, gave up a third-round draft pick, even though they knew they had only 1 year to go on the contract. Reddick came in, press conference, he was there during the OTA meetings, he didn't practice, and then he disappears. And he wants a monster pay raise. He wants from 14 mil to 25 mil right now. He's got 1 year left on the deal. And Joe Douglas has just lost his patience with him. And last night, Joe Douglas said publicly to the media, I'm asking Hassan Reddick, do you want to play in the NFL? You want to go somewhere else and get a different job? I'm not talking to you again until you're in front of me in uniform practicing. We're not going to trade you, and we're not going to talk contract extension till you're here. We're a week away from the start of the season. And the Jets got so many player personnel problems, aside from the arrival of Aaron Rodgers. Robert Saleh's coaching career is in big jeopardy. And here's a guy that they traded for, that they were banking on, that was going to be the cornerstone and heart and soul of the defense, and he's been nowhere to be seen. So this is really nasty. And then the fourth story financially is Cleveland. They're not saying it, but everybody around the NFL I network with is of the opinion they really regret the contract they gave Deshaun Watson, his $230 million guarantee. Hustler, I don't know if you're aware of what they did. They just restructured it for the second time in 2 seasons because of cap issues. They converted $44 million of the package into a signing bonus and spread it out. His cap figure next year will be an all-time NFL record, $72.9 million next year and the year after, and you can't restructure it again. And he hasn't played. He hasn't played like the quarterback that was with the Houston Texans. So, Cleveland, as good as they are on paper, they got a bit of a question mark here. They got an attitude issue here at quarterback with Deshaun Watson, and Watson's not what he used to be. This could turn out to just be a disaster for the Cleveland Browns if this does not work out. $72 million cap figure. Holy cow.
It's bizarre. But Lee, what was really confusing to me about that was that I read at the same time that the Browns right now have the most cap space in the National Football League at something like $62 million. They were going to spend some of that on Brandon Ayuk that they were trying to get to add to that wide receiver room. But again,
they also have to sign a whole pile of their in-house free agents. That was the whole methodology that will get the cap space, because they got good big cap space for next year too. But we got the cap space. We got to re-sign some of these guys now. They know there are going to be some free agent guys they're going to have to re-sign once we get to the offseason. And we know the price tag on those guys' contracts are probably going to go up. So, and Watson hasn't played well. Watson's played, 10 games in 2.5, 3 years because he had the big suspension coming out of Houston that carried into Cleveland, and he played in Cleveland, didn't play well. Then he got hurt last year, and we don't know how healthy he is. They shut him down at the end of preseason because he's got soreness in that surgically repaired shoulder. So that it's probably indirectly why the Browns, as of lunchtime today, when you're having your Boston pizza and your cold one, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with Pilsner in Saskatchewan, so shut up. While you're having lunch, Cleveland's got 4 quarterbacks on their roster. Nobody in the world has 4 quarterbacks under contract, but Cleveland's got 4 of them on their 53-man roster, which leads me to believe that there's some physical woes still going on with Deshaun Watson, too. So Cleveland's not ready to start the season.
Lee, is the Deshaun Watson, will that go down as the worst trade/contract potentially in NFL history?
That's a good question. A lot of people around the NFL kind of in hate mode for what the Haslams did in Cleveland. They traded 3 number 1 picks, which was a high water mark for a quarterback who was coming off all these off-the-field problems. And then they agreed on a $230 million lock, stock, guaranteed contract, which set a new high water mark for everybody else to shoot at when their contracts came up. And this is Watson, who's got physical problems. This is Watson, who's obviously had off-the-field problems. And this is Watson, who's now created a financial problem for the Cleveland Browns. If they don't get out of the gate quick, boy, there's going to be so much anger in Cleveland over this whole Deshaun Watson thing. And there's a lot of anger being directed at the Haslam family, who owns the team, for the way they've conducted, quote, their business. They got a good team on the field. They don't have all the answers to this quarterback situation yet.
Hey, Lee, quickly, just wrapping the NFL, I did want to ask you, I mean, listen, next week is go time. We got clarity on a few of the starting QB situations on ones that were a little foggy, including the one in Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh is a bit of a surprise to me because of the fact that Russell Wilson doesn't seem to be 100% healthy, or at least 100% capacity, the kind of Russell Wilson we've all come to see. I watched him closely last week, and he played the first quarter of that preseason game, and he didn't look strong. He didn't move the pocket. He just looked slow. Maybe that'll come with another full week of practice. Justin Fields had played more than, Wilson did, but Fields has just been so highly erratic, throwing the ball not on time, throw it into the coverages, rifle arm, etc. They've changed his footwork to try to make him more solid in the pocket rather than have him scramble all over the place. So I think Pittsburgh's quarterback situation is kind of uncertain. I don't understand New England's decision to go back to Jacoby Brissett. Drake May, his last 2 preseason games, played well. I don't think they have a good team around whoever the quarterback is. But if this is your future, the faster you get him into live fire action and the learning curve that he will go through as regular season starts, I would think that Drake May probably should have been the guy. Can't wait for Chicago's opener. Everybody that I network with is of the opinion Caleb Williams is the next Patrick Mahomes. Washington is excited. Jaden Daniels played well in preseason, didn't make a lot of mistakes. But that's exhibition games, and the live bullets start this weekend. He does not have a good team around him in Washington, so that bears watching. Fascinated to see Denver. Denver's got 3 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. Maybe that's an insurance policy in case Bo Nix isn't really ready to be able to do this, but everything that Bo Nix showed in Sean Payton's offense through the 3 preseason games seems to be really positive. And then, of course, we talked about Cleveland. They got 4 quarterbacks on the roster. If they could find a 5th one on the street corner, probably put him in there. So it's a really mixed bag involving the quarterback situations around the league.
Hey, Lee, before we go, I got to ask you a quick baseball question. There's a lot of talk about, and again, it won't matter, one's in the AL, one's in the NL, and there's different MVPs, but Aaron Judge with his 50-plus bombs or the 40-40 season by Shohei Ohtani. You've been around this game for a while. If you had to pick the best player in baseball this year, is it Judge? Is it Ohtani?
Well, Ohtani's generational because he's a designated hitter who can play outfield and pitched very successfully before he blew his elbow out. Judge, though, right now is the most complete player in Major League Baseball. He's changed his mechanics. He's changed his swing. He's more compact. He's got the 50-plus bombs. He's made himself a really good center fielder with a cannon for an arm. He's a good guy in the community. The community in New York, which is so bleeping big, it's unbelievable, but he does a lot of charitable stuff, and he's just really, really humble. So if you're asking me one over the other, and I love both of them are must-see TV. When they're on my TV, I got to stop and watch Ohtani swing or wonder if Judge is going to make it home run 54, 55, 56. I'd take Judge as the most complete player in the game right now, but they're both MVPs. And by the way, speaking of Showtime, Ohtani, did you see the video on Twitter, on X, of throwing out the first pitch with his dog? That was so cool. I don't know that. You know how they invite Hustler out to throw the first pitch to the Winnipeg Gold Eye game? Well, they always have celebrities at Dodger Stadium toss out the first pitch. And instead, they brought out Ohtani's dog wearing a Dodger kerchief. Ball is on the mound. Shohei snaps his finger. Dog picks up the ball and runs to home plate and drops it on the plate and then does a high five with his paw with Ohtani. It was the most historical thing I've seen on X. I don't see a lot of great things on Twitter, but this was really unique.
You know what? A nice smile to finish off what's been a heavy day for a lot of sports fans. Lee, thanks so much for doing this. Folks, make sure you're subscribing to the Lee Hacksaw Hamilton YouTube channel. You can check Lee's shows out Mondays and Thursdays right after our program. And, of course, get out to leehacksawhamilton.com, the website for the best 15 minutes every day. Lee, have a great weekend. Enjoy the Labor Day Classic. Bombers Riders. What's it going to be? 4 o'clock your time, Sunday afternoon. We're going to be there. It's going to be a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week. And on a game day, Lee, Friday next week, we got Packers Eagles in Brazil.
Yeah, we're ready to open the NFL season. I'll leave you with this thought. And again, spin back to the passing of Johnny Gaudreau. Think about him in this vein. He made everybody smile. He was fun. Not only was he a great player, and there's great players everywhere around the National Hockey League, and you dealt with them, I've dealt with them, etc. But he was such a great personality. In the NHL, they lost a great personality in addition to a great player. So keep that in mind. Smiles all the time and heavy heart. But he gave a lot to the game, a lot to his community, and obviously to his family too. Hey, Hustler, have yourself a great holiday weekend. We'll see you next week.
Have a great one, Lee. Thanks so much. There he is, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Follow him on X and make sure you're checking out the website and the pod. All right. Well, listen, gang, I wasn't sure this was going to happen, but I think it is. Now, for going the extra mile to try to make this marble race happen, I need you to hit that thumbs up button, please, if you have not already. And make sure you've hit the subscribe button. If there's anyone that hasn't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please hit that. You can turn your notifications on if you want to know when we're going. But you got to be subscribed to the channel to be eligible to win the Marbles hoodie. And by the way, and I'm going to hit this to you, a big thanks to our friend Scott Shipham. We were at the golf tournament yesterday in the memory of his late brother, Randy, who was just, an all-time beauty character. It was a great time. I'm happy to announce to you that new hoodies are on the way. We're just finishing the order. We'll probably have them in a week or two. So if you've been a winner over the last month or so and we didn't have your size, hold up. But my question to you is this. Would you like the ones that we've had before have had, just the Winnipeg Sports Talk logo on the front? Would you like us to add maybe something on the sleeve that says like Marbles Champion? Or do we want to leave it more low-key or discreet? Let us know in the chat, especially you former winners. Would you be prouder wearing it knowing that it identifies you as a Marbles champion? We'll get to that coming up in just a few minutes. Last call for Marbles. If you haven't put it in already, get that done, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. Shout out to the Gold Eyes. They're back in action tonight. The series begins today. The final 4 games of the regular season. Gold Eyes hanging on to first place. Still a little work to do to clinch first. And then playoff baseball next week. Goldeyes.com, 982 base for tickets. Cannot wait to be talking about some playoff baseball next week. But in the meantime, if you are in the city, get out there and get to the ballpark this weekend for your first place Winnipeg Gold Eyes. A happy Labor Day to our friends at Aikens Lake. I know the guys will be crowded around the television after a day of fishing for the big Labor Day game. Lots of Bomber fans there at Aikens Lake. They're already booking well into 2025. So get over to aikenslake.com and find out more information on everything involved in the one-of-a-kind Aikens Lake experience, and get planning to get out to Aikens Lake for that dream fishing trip next year in 2025. Aikens Lake on all your socials and aikenslake.com. Next Monday is a day off, but it ain't a day off at Assiniboia Downs. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday racing. coming up next week. So finish off Labor Day, 7:30 post time out at Assiniboia Downs for a great night of live racing. And I hopefully will be able to come from behind and make up my gap on Remus, which is a lot closer than it was a few weeks ago. But we still have more racing left this week as well as the following week over at Assiniboia Downs. A quick Breezy Bend golf update for you. A big shout out to our friends. Great day yesterday. My God, the food, the hospitality at Breezy is just so good. Had a great time yesterday, and the course could not be in better shape. Our Breezy Golf report today is the Tour Championship, and Scotty Scheffler kind of making this a bit of a laugher right now. Had a 7-shot lead yesterday with his 10-shot spot. He's 19 under right now, 9 under technically for the tournament, and he's got a 6-shot lead on Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa for the tournament so far. Nice round today by Tony Finau. He's at 9 under as well. Rory McIlroy's at 9. Canadian and Coolbet guy Taylor Pendrith as well, all right there. Shout out to Breezy Bend, breezybend.ca for more information on membership and wedding rentals for coming up next season. And just before we get to, and I'll bring Connor in for this as well, because Connor, we have to get to the Coolbet lines. I guess the thing, the important for everyone here, BC's still a 2-point favorite. Bombers are now, the money line hasn't changed in this, but the line has dropped from 2.5 to 2 for Saskatchewan in the Labor Day Classic. Argos are 5-point favorites, and the Stamps are 3-point favorites in that game. But what I really need to talk about is Chestnut versus Kobayashi, which is on Netflix on Monday afternoon, the long-awaited matchup between the two greatest competitive eaters of all time. And we got some information today on what is happening with with this event. It's not like the Nathan's event. 2 very key rules. Number 1, no dunking. They will not be able to dunk the buns in water. And get this, no separation of the dog. The dogs will be consumed in the buns the way hot dogs were meant to be done. Now, when the lines opened up for this and we didn't know these rules, Joey Chestnut was over under 62.5 hot dogs and buns. Kobayashi was 49.5. The line actually moved yesterday for Joey from 62.5 to 67. I thought that was insane, just because this is, like, you're talking about taking the greatest eaters of all time and making them completely change their techniques. I don't think they're going to be able to put up massive numbers. I see it's now gone down to 65.5 for Joey in the last hour or so. And the total combined hot dogs eaten at 115.5. I mean, Joey Chestnut's going to win this, but I do think that because of these rules that Netflix has put in for this spectacular on Labor Day, I'm not sure we're going to be seeing Nathan's level numbers, even though it's Joey Chestnut and Takeru Kobayashi going head to head.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get a chance to watch one of the greatest, most generational athletes of all time, Joey Chestnut,
thank you,
do his thing. yeah, I don't know. It's your boy Bruce in chat is saying the dunking in water is ridiculous. Anyways, I agree. Like, why is that a thing? Anyways, I like this. Not that I watch. I just look at the highlights afterwards because I can't watch.
Everybody watches.
But
I'm getting a Netflix subscription solely to be able to watch this on my phone on the way back from Regina, 2 p.m. on Monday afternoon. Now, there is also a WWE event this weekend, and shout out to the guys at Coolbet for throwing that up there as well. We went through it on the Lock Shop. There are 2 matchups that I kind of like. Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley over Dom Mysterio and Liv Morgan. And then the women's tag championships, the Unholy Union winning. We think that there's going to be some beef between Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. So we're actually doing the first ever hot dogs and hot tags parlay of the Unholy Union, Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, and under 117.5 total hot dogs consumed by Chestnut and Kobayashi. Pay attention to the Coolbet exclusives for those, and we will make that happen. But it's all there up at Coolbet. They do have the Bash at Berlin for WWE. They do have the hot dog event on Labor Day between Chestnut and Kobayashi. Again, 2 p.m. on Monday afternoon. It's all there. And then, of course, all of your CFL options. We do have the Lock Shop Partner Parlay, which is still up for the CFL. And that is BC minus 2.5, Bombers Riders under 47.5, Elks plus 315. That is up there at plus 615 boosted. And Pat and Jake have a tease Saturday special for college football if you want to get that in the exclusives as well. If you haven't played a cool bet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200. All right, well, Connor, you know what time it is now. I think we're going to be able to make some marbles happen today. And a huge thank you to Adam, who is behind the scenes. Adam, throw your mic on if you can, and let's set this up. Let us know, how many marbles do we have, and what track have we selected today?
We have 180 marbles.
Nicely done. Shout out to everyone that's in.
160 something. Not sure what track this is. A League to Remember. It's called A League to Remember.
A League to Remember. All right, a new marble race today. A League to Remember. Right on. We're looking forward to it. Looks like it's got a wild Plinko finish, or a Plinko start, I should say.
Yeah.
And as I said, it started off on a pretty down note, but we're getting ready for the weekend. We're going to hopefully finish with a smile. Adam and Mitch, by the way, all week long, absolutely killing it in Remus's place, getting us on. I did not think that this was going to be realistic, but it is. And Connor, you know that there's nothing that the WST crew likes more than a marble race to finish off a fun week on this program and head into a weekend. Never mind a long weekend and a Labor Day Classic weekend.
And never mind the fact we didn't have one last week. So there's a lot riding on this marble race. This is a big one going into the long weekend. Didn't have one last week. Let's do it. I'm fired up.
Right on. Okay, so here we go, folks. Everyone that's in, shout out to you for popping by. We have dropped the marbles and it is on. This is a very fast track. Look at how fast these marbles are going right now. Looks like Cowboy's in the mix early on. He's looking quite good. Oh, we've got some Doug McFarlane in the mix. Holy smokes, look at this.
Whoa.
A league of our own. This is definitely, I don't know, maybe we're on a higher speed this week or something like that, but this is going, oh my God, Amanda got thrown way to the front. She might actually win again. I saw Amanda last night. She's still glowing about her victory on the 1st of March, that memorable day. Now, Amanda, if you want to look the other way, because we do have one in. Okay, so she's in this funnel right now. Can Ron P or someone catch Amanda? No, Amanda's won it. An incredible second victory for Amanda. We're never going to hear the end of this. We are never going to hear the end of this. Al Broderick looking good. Now they get shot in. Is Al going to take second place? Al does. Ron P, Todd Fertani in. I like this. We're getting some sound effects from the marble race today, which we often don't have. The fact that everyone's getting shot into this is amazing. The thing was, Amanda, what happened here, and this happens every now and then, you can get very, very lucky when you're actually getting thrown over the top rope and somehow manage to pop in later on. That is exactly what happened. A very juiced up marble race for the end of this week. Amanda, now a 2-time marbles champion. I am never going to hear the end of this. Congratulations to her. That was a wild race today. The league. as I said, huge thanks to Adam for being able to make that happen today. I know how much we like to do it. Remus will be back next week. I think he's been away the last 3 Fridays. He'll be back next Friday, and it's basically back to regularly scheduled programming as we're going to be getting in to up to training camp. And of course, Connor, you're going to be a busy guy because not only do we have Winnipeg Sports Talk Weekly, which I'm sure will have a ton of Bomber content in it. Coming up, I guess you and Liz are still working on this Braden Yeager deep dive, and I know people are very much looking forward to that after he joined us last week on the show.
Yeah, so I was actually texting Remus yesterday, and I think the deep dive for Braden Yeager, it has been recorded, it has been edited. Since there's no show Monday, I think that's going to come out Monday, and then I'm away in Winnipeg Beach this weekend, so WST Weekly you can look for Tuesday. I'll have the end of the Gold Eyes season to talk about. They will have made the playoffs. Obviously, they've clinched, but maybe they'll be the 1 seed, the 2 seed. I'll cover that. The Bombers, obviously, and some other sporting stuff here happening in Winnipeg. So Monday, Braden Yeager deep dive. Super excited for people to check that out. And then Tuesday, WST Weekly.
Hey, you know what? Before we go, hey, Adam, do you still have the Marbles results up on that screen? That's the one thing I kind of forgot to do, which we often do. We'll just do a rundown, just a scroll down. So if people have side bets going like head to head with their friends, they can see where they went. Or have we already got out of the Marbles program?
Yeah, we already closed it. Seeing if we can pull it up. Oh, we've got it here. Hang on.
Oh, we do have it here? All right, perfect. Let's fire it up. And if you can, just get it on the screen. I don't know if you can make it look bigger at all. Just so we can just zoom in just a little bit. Okay, I think on this one we can see it. So here we go. There's Amanda with that incredible one. And I'm not sure whether this is normally that fast or is the speed, but a record-breaking run by Amanda, getting very lucky where the way she got shot out of the can and then actually ended up in. But Al Broderick with a heck of a performance. Ron Pre, Todd Fertani in 4th. XX Revolution in 5th. The rest of the top 10 was Ron Pritchitko, Wicked John, Pesky Nesky, Candace Jane, the queen of the WST chat and Marbles crew, and Carly Cookson. Now, if you just want to just scroll down, again, people can go back later on and see exactly where they sat. Hey, there's Les Thompson, 16th. That a boy, Les. Hope you all have a great weekend. Jamie Stevenson, 17th, the dream. Nicely done. And then just scroll down if you can, all the way to the bottom, just so people can. Did you get that? Or is that not there anymore? Okay. No big deal. I think we might have. Well, you got the top 20, folks. Other than that, we'll be back to normal. But I'm glad we were able to fire this up. Full results not available today, but the result that does matter. Who got across first? It was Amanda. So congratulations to them. So Connor, what give us the like what's your Labor Day going to be like? We're going to miss you next year. I think we need to book you in. But your big camping trip with the fam?
Big camping trip with the fam. I'm heading out tomorrow morning. My family's all heading out probably in the next hour or two here. Heading to Winnipeg Beach as we always do, Labor Day weekend. It's one of my favorite weekends of the year. One of my favorite camping trips because it cools off and the campfires late at night are actually mean something. You're not sweating all day. And then it's like, oh, let's have a campfire. It's like, no, now it's actually cold and you can kind of bundle up around the fire. So that's great. And then 6 o'clock, we're going to have a lot of Bomber fans out there. 6 o'clock on Sunday, that is, for the big game. Super fired up. And then driving back Monday to work at the Gold Eyes game Monday at 1 p.m., their season finale against Lincoln. That's my weekend.
Yeah, well, listen, we'll miss you out in Regina. Once again, to everyone coming with us on the 1930 crew, cannot wait to see you tomorrow. We are going to have a heck of a great time in Regina and hopefully come back in first place, ready for the rematch in the Banjo Bowl. Big thanks to all of our sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. As we get into Labor Day, again, I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Use your head, folks. Make wise decisions and keep an eye out for others that might not be doing as well, because there's nothing that'll ruin a great weekend and a joyous and time for celebration like a weekend like this is, than a terrible decision that ends up impacting people's lives forever, like we saw with the horrible Johnny Gaudreau tragedy yesterday. I want to thank Connor for killing it all week long with Michael. And again, you'll have more Connor Monday with Liz, the deep dive on Braden Yeager. Check that out. Turn your notifications on. When it's up on YouTube, you get a message. You can be one of the first people to get in. Give him a thumbs up and leave a comment in as well. That always helps us spread the channel. And of course, then I post Labor Day WST Weekly early Tuesday as we all get back to work. Michael and I will be back. The gang will be all back together for a big show on Tuesday, setting up Banjo Bowl week. And of course, 2 days away from NHL kickoff. That is going to do it for us. If you're in town Sunday, check out that boxing at the Beer Can. It's for a great cause. Wherever you are enjoying the Labor Day Classic, have a great time. Have a great weekend overall, but do it safely and use your head. And I'll look forward to seeing all of you back here on Tuesday if we don't see you in Regina first. Bombing and Walby are firing up Bonfire Blue Bomber pregame right now. So we'll head over to Bonfire, tell them the WST crew is there. Go Blue, say hi to Bombing and Walby, and have a great, safe, and fun Labor Day long weekend. Go Bombers. We'll see you back here on Tuesday on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks again to Mitch and Adam for a great job all week long taking over for Remus. We'll see you on Tuesday, everybody. Thanks for hanging. Now let's head over to Bonfire.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.